CIA does a really good job of what we call intramural dating. It brings really smart, really talented people together who all work really hard on a mission. And then all of those people spend all of their time working. So you end up working 12, 14, 16 hours a day next to the same people who have the same level of clearance as you, so then they become your friends. Well, it's natural that in that same group, your friends are going to start to become the people that you date.
Yes.
What's not necessarily natural is that my wife and I started dating, and then we also got engaged, and then we also got married, and then we also had children, and then we as a team decided to leave CIA together to raise a family. That journey is kind of unique to us.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily surprising when you think of how aligned our values were from the very beginning.
Yeah.
It just happened to be that we also had our values aligned on having children, and that when we had children, it was never a question, do we pick family or do we pick career?
I love that. I mean, I think that, I mean, I don't have kids, but if I was in your situation, my wife, kids, like, it's family, man. I mean, you keep on saying it's like your legacy. It's like, it's everything to you, right? And it's just like, life is a fucking blink of an eye, man. And so many people get caught up in the rat race. Mm-hmm. And it's like, when you look back at it all, you're 85, 90, 100, however old it is when you take your last breath. It's like, are you going to remember working those extra 4 hours or spending those extra 4 hours with your kids, right? Like, what really matters? How did Everyday Spy come about?
So it's funny, when you leave CIA, first of all, I left CIA in 2014. My wife and I left in 2014. That was at a time before the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Which means that the world had never really heard of a president that disagreed with CIA.
Yeah.
Now, since 2016, something that not many people know is that the CIA has gone, the entire intelligence community has gone through a massive exodus. The Trump years were some of the most contentious years between the intelligence community and the White House, and the intelligence community serves in the executive branch, and the president is the executive. So when the president doesn't agree with the intelligence community, he just doesn't use them, which makes all of their work worthless. Their careers come to a standstill. Like, you're still in a job, right? So when Trump was in office and the CIA started making accusations and he started making counter accusations, essentially he just stopped using CIA, which meant all of their careers came to a grinding halt. And they didn't know if he was going to be a 4-year president or an 8-year president. In a government career, 8 years is like a third of your entire career.
Yeah.
So a lot of young people were like, I'm not going to waste the first third of my career, and they jettisoned, they bailed. My wife and I left 2 years before the Trump administration. We left at a time when it was unheard of for people to leave CIA. So they didn't really know what to do with us. So when we left, they didn't pull back our cover. They didn't like release that we could say that we were from CIA. They just kind of set us adrift with a resume that they wrote for us that was horrible because it had to be approved by their publication board. So here we are on our own, still undercover. We can't say that we ever worked at CIA with this horribly written resume. It's like the nightmare. And we're both 34 years old. So we're trying to rebuild a life with this shitty resume. We look just unprofessional as hell. Our references don't come through. There's nobody who picks up the phone when you call our last job because it was a covered job. It's not backstopped anymore. We were unemployed for 6 months, living in my in-laws' garage, converted garage, like breezeway. It was humiliating, dude. And I had a child who was 12 months old, 13 months old, he turned 1 year, living in a garage, in my in-laws' garage. It was the most humbling experience of my life. But about 4 months into it, I realized that I was really shitty at finding a job, but I was pretty good at spying. So I started using the skills that CIA gave me to help find work instead of trying to find work the way that I was supposed to find work.
Yeah.
So I just networked my way to meet an executive, networked my way to get that executive to trust me, found out what his openings were, and then he just offered me a job, right? So I went 4 months unemployed. It took me a month and a half to be able to find 5 or 7 executives that lived in my local area actually meet them, actually befriend them. And then it took, a few weeks before the one that I befriended was like, why don't you come work for me? You're a smart guy.
Yeah.
You're a sharp guy. You're a former Air Force officer. Like, we could use a guy like you in my outfit. I was like, oh, well, I don't have, I got to get a resume cleaned up and all this other stuff. And he's like, no, I'm just going to connect you with my hiring person. You guys negotiate a salary and you're in. And that's how it worked. Once that happened, once spy skills got me an unfair advantage in my career, then the wheels started turning.
So fresh on me. Freedom!